We will pick up with conservation of natural resources, continuing with Teddy Roosevelt. Roosevelt was concerned about nature. He was afraid Americans thought that our natural resources would last forever. Seeing the shrinking wilderness and the issues with pollution in the cities, he decided to take action. He set up several national parks, and he declared millions of acres to be reserves where you could not farm, log, or take any of the trees down. He also established more than 50 conservation centers and wildlife sanctuaries. Now, Roosevelt will actually decide not to run for re-election, but he did choose who he wanted to run in his place, and that was his War Secretary, William Howard Taft. On a side note, Roosevelt himself decided to go to Africa to hunt wild game at this point, but you don't have to know that. Now, Taft was a pretty cautious president, and he never really liked to take sides, but this was a problem when the Republican Party was kind of split between two wings. You had the progressives who wanted change, and then you had the conservatives who did not want change. So the Republican Party does split underneath Taft. Now, when Roosevelt returns from his Africa trip, he's welcomed back warmly and encouraged to run for president again, and he does decide to do that. We have a new third party at this point, the Progressive Party, and this is going to be kind of led by Roosevelt as the face of it, and it later becomes known as the Bull Moose Party. So you have the Republicans, the Democrats, and the Bull Moose, which is kind of a branch of progressive Republicans. Because of this split, Roosevelt's actually going to lose the election, and Democrats are actually going to win this next election easily. And that is under Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson, the Democratic candidate, wins the presidency. This is the 1912 election, y'all, just to give you an idea of time, but you don't have to know that year. Now, Wilson was a reform-minded president, just like Roosevelt, even though they were from two different parties. They both were kind of progressive thinking. And he definitely wanted to use his role in the federal government to attack corrupt power, starting with trusts and monopolies. So he passes what is called the Clayton, C-L-A-Y-T-O-N, Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914. And this act just strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act, and it increased the penalties if you were caught participating in a trust that blocked free trade. He also is responsible for the development of the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, which was a government agency that had the power to investigate possible violations of business practices And it required periodic reports from major corporations to prove they were not participating in corrupt practices. Now, in terms of his new tax system, Wilson worked hard to lower tariffs on imports from other countries. He hoped that by eliminating tariffs, this would encourage more international competition, that it would hurt the trade, the trusts and monopolies in the U.S., because they would have to match their prices to their international competition now. But because of this, the government kind of lost some revenue. Remember, government makes money off of tariffs, the tax that goes to them. So to replace it, the federal government institutes the income tax. And the income tax is something passed under the 16th Amendment. And you all know that an income tax is a tax on individual earnings and corporate profits. With larger incomes being taxed at higher rates than smaller incomes. It initially had a range of 1% to 6%. That number has grown quite substantially. Alright, we're going to stop here today. And we will pick up with women's suffrage tomorrow, and that's going to be the last thing we talk about for your test on Tuesday. Write down any questions, and I'll see you tomorrow.